IC-814, the Indian Airlines plane, gets hijacked. I think many people have forgotten that even after the deal was done, one of the hijackers says, "We have left a present for you, you India, in the plane." And there's complete panic because the suspicion is there's a bomb.
That's when they found this car with dark windows, so they didn't know who it was that was in the car, but the headlights of the car were on, and somebody was showing bag after bag which was red in color.
Why did Captain Devi Sharan, who was piloting the plane, why did he take off from Amritsar? When the plane was hijacked, the hijackers brought a blood-stained knife to the flight deck, to the cockpit, and said, "If you do not take off, we will kill a passenger every 10 minutes.
It's a very difficult choice that the pilot must have had.
Why was the plane not stopped in Amritsar somehow, anyhow? And two, when we think of the dreaded terrorists who were released, Masood Azhar, Mushtaq Zargar, Umar Sheikh, who would go on to harm the interests of India, the rest of the world, could something different have been done? This decision to release terrorists.
This was a plane load of our people sitting in a airport in a country with whom we had no relationship, with a regime that we were not all that familiar or friendly with.
The initial demand from the hijackers was to release 36 Pakistanis in Indian jails.
That's true.
36.
Yes.
And $200 million in cash. And then it was whittled down to the release of these three men.
Yes. Absolutely.
Terrorists.
Absolutely.
In this eventful year of 1999, when you are, posted as a diplomat in Islamabad, IC-814, the Indian Airlines plane, gets hijacked. And that chapter in the book has been written by your husband.
That's right.
Who was actually sent by the High Commission to be in Kandahar as the negotiations were happening to get the passengers released. Now, it's a riveting chapter, not least because I think many people have forgotten that even after the deal was done, one of the hijackers says, "We have left a present for you, you India, in the plane." This is when the terrorists have been released, the passengers have been released, the deal is over, it's all winding down, and there's complete panic because the suspicion is there's a bomb that's been left behind in the plane that still has to fly back to India. And then comes the sort of crazy attempt to find this red bag. Tell us that story.
Well, that's a story that would be best
told by your husband, but he's not here.
But he's not here, he's in Bangalore. But the thing is that there was this message which somehow reached Mr. Ajit Doval and also the team, that there is a special present for India which is going to be made known at night, at midnight. So all of these people were asked to stay away from the plane. But one of the pilots was, refusing to leave. He was trying out because the next day they would have to fly it. But so when they went in search of that pilot, that's when they found this car with dark windows, so they didn't know who it was that was in the car, but the headlights of the car were on, and somebody was showing bag after bag which was red in color to this bag. And before leaving, Ghanshyam made an attempt to get hold of that bag, asked about it, but of course nobody or nothing was forthcoming, and eventually he left.
And that bag was never found?
No.
Though there was some talk that somebody had found a bag with 5 grenades in it.
Well, there was some talk that a bag was found. We don't know what was in that bag. The bag was eventually found and taken away. But we don't know what was in that bag, and we never got hold of that bag.
Now two questions have always been asked about IC-814, and one of them is asked in your book. Why did Captain Devi Sharan, who was piloting the plane, why did he take off from Amritsar? Why did he just not stay put at Amritsar? Equally, the question has been asked, why did the authorities here not do anything to just block the plane from taking off? And your book has his account, the pilot's account, which he's sharing with one of the officials in the government contingent. And he says that when the plane was hijacked, the hijackers brought a blood-stained knife to the flight deck, to the cockpit, and said, if you do not take off, we will kill a passenger every 10 minutes.
Absolutely. So, in fact, it's a very difficult choice that the pilot must have had. And those of us who were not in his position perhaps cannot judge the correctness or whether there was any other option available to him at that point. Suffice it to say that didn't happen. I think that's where we'll have to leave it, because only he could have said, and only he knows what kind of pressures that he was in at that point of time.
But we saw an extraordinary moment, and I'll tell you on a lighter side a story about myself. I was a young reporter then. I had just finished covering the Kargil war, and this was kind of my beat. Yeah. And we had got to know that Jaswant Singh was going to, go to Kandahar, and these 3 terrorists, including Masood Azhar, were going to be released in exchange for the safety of these passengers. Now, they were taking off from the technical airport in Delhi, and there was no way. There was very tight security. There was no way to get inside. The media was all outside. I found a small Maruti van. In those days, we had Maruti vans, and it was taking boxes of packed food that were going to go on the plane for the Indian contingent to have on the way. And I hid in that van, at the back of that van, hid among the boxes of sandwiches, managed to reach the tarmac. Was actually getting ready to climb up the steps when Mr. Jaswant Singh found me there and said, Barkha, what are you doing here? Yes, I know you want to come, but you cannot go back. And by that time, the rest of the media had started fighting outside. How did she get in? How did she get in? And of course, I was sent packing back. So it's a story I always hold dear. But on a more serious note. Now, that's on a lighter note, that story. But on a more serious note, the questions persist. And the questions are, why was the plane not stopped in Amritsar somehow, anyhow? And 2, when we think of the dreaded terrorists who were released, Masood Azhar, Mushtaq Zargar, Umar Sheikh, who would go on to harm the interests of India, the rest of the world, could something different have been done? This decision to release terrorists, I know the government did not have an easy choice. I know it was the Hobson's choice. But when you look back at it, could something different have been done?
I don't know if anything different could have been done, though, like every other Indian, I would also be hoping and wishing that, we didn't have to do it, because the challenges that have been faced by us as a result of this have been quite enormous. But I always like to try and see, putting myself in the place of the people who were taking the decision.
Yeah.
And when I think of that, I feel that this was a plane load of our people sitting in a airport in a country with whom we had no relationship, with a regime that we were not all that familiar or friendly with. And the number of demands which they received to start with, compared to that this was a massively scaled down version of, and it is possible that they felt through the negotiations that there was no way to go any further, to get any further.
That's an important point, because when I read the book, either I didn't know this or I had forgotten it. The initial demand from the hijackers was to release 36 Pakistanis in Indian jails.
That's true.
36.
Yes.
And $200 million in cash. And then it was whittled down to the release of these 3 men.
Yes.
Terrorists.
Absolutely.
And you're right that India did not have a relationship with the Taliban at that time. The book very rivetingly describes, sitting in the air traffic control tower of Kandahar. Your husband is there.
Yes.
Then the Indian delegation arrives, Ajit Doval, Vivek Karjo among them. These negotiations happen.
Yes.
And eventually what happens. Do you think that this story could have ended in an alternative way? For example, we have countries like America that statedly say we don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah.
But they do manage to get high-profile prisoner swaps.
Yes.
So do you think this is just a slogan? We don't negotiate with terrorists?
I really don't know if this is just a slogan or if there are things that happen behind the scene that we are not privy to. But in this case, I mean, I think it's very difficult for us to feel the pressures that they were in. I know that when Ghanshyam first went and they threatened to kill passengers, he was really, I mean, he was alone at that time, but he didn't take it lightly.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this is just something, you shrug off. And he actually
And one passenger
worried.
was killed.
Yes. So he was actually worried that that they just might start doing it.
Yeah.
So they had killed a passenger. There was, there was surely some uncertainty about whether they would or they wouldn't repeat that. So it's even with hindsight, I wish that there was a different outcome, but I don't know if they could have managed a different outcome.